Hi. In the back of your book, there are some appendixes that you should refer to for general information. 3 of those refer to the parts of the guitar and the guitar types and how we hold a guitar. So I'm going to review some of that information right now. Sitting right over here is a steel string acoustic guitar. And let's review some of the parts of this guitar. Starting all the way at the top, we tend to call this the headstock. It's the head of the guitar. On the headstock are the tuners. We use these to tune the guitar, and we're going to talk more about that soon. So every guitar has tuners. This is called 3 on a side, 3 tuners on each side. There are some guitars that have all 6 on one side. As we come down, this is the nut. The nut's really important. It's what stops the string there. And the tone of the string, or actually the frequency, the note that the string makes, is determined by the distance from this nut, which stops the string from vibrating, all the way to here, which is the saddle. And so the saddle stops it on one side, and the nut stops it on the other. If we were to lengthen that, the pitch of the string would change. This is the neck. So we got the headstock and the neck. On the neck we have frets. The frets are in half steps. We talk about that a little bit on the DVD, and we place our fingers right behind them to form the notes. Most guitars have markers on the neck to help us find our position. The most common thing is to have the markers at the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and double dots typically at the 12th fret. 12th fret's really important because that's the octave. That's where the guitar starts all over again. If this is an E, at the 12th fret, it's an E again, and everything just sort of starts again. This is the body of the guitar. This is a sound hole. The strings vibrate. They vibrate the top of the instrument. That vibration kind of is amplified in here. It's like an amplifier and comes out of that hole. This is a pick guard. That's basically there to protect your guitar, especially if you're using a pick. You tend to sometimes strike the top of the guitar and scratch it. So that's a pick guard. I said that this is the saddle, and this is the bridge. The bridge holds the strings down, right? Fastens them to the top of the guitar. We'll talk a little bit more about these bridge pins in the tuning and stringing section, actually, because they hold the strings in position. So body, bridge, saddle, sound hole, neck, fretboard, headstock, and tuners. Before I move on, let's talk about how you use a guitar like this. This is a steel string guitar, probably the most common type of guitar you're going to see around, at least in popular music. They're very, very versatile. They have a very bright sound. It's a shimmering, bright sound. They're great for strumming. They're good for finger picking. Very popular. I'm going to move over to this one. We call this a classical guitar. We also call it a nylon string guitar. The basic parts are the same, a few small differences. Starting at the top, again, we have the headstock, we have the tuners. It's kind of a stylistic thing. Most nylon string guitars have these slots. We call this a slotted headstock. The tuners are just mounted in a slightly different direction. Here's our nut. Here's our neck and our fretboard. You'll notice this neck is black. There are no markers on it, but we get to cheat. There's usually little dots on this side that you can't see. So that helps guide us, and we know where we are on the neck. Here's the body of the guitar, the sound hole. Here's the same saddle as before, and here's the bridge. And again, when we talk about stringing the guitars, this is a little different. These nylon strings, nylon being a type of plastic, are actually tied to the guitar, whereas on the steel string guitar, we wedge it in with a bridge pin. Here we actually tie it. You might be able to see that there's small knots there. This guitar, well, they were certainly common in Europe, but especially in Spain and Latin America. And this type of guitar is really heavily associated with classical guitar, with classical music, and with Spanish music. These nylon strings have a much softer sound than that steel string. It's a very pretty sound. Also, because classical guitar evolved to be played with the fingers, whereas steel string is often played with a pick, classical is almost always played with fingers. The neck is wider. The width of this neck is much wider than the width of that, and that helps you to put your fingers in between the strings. When it comes down to it, though, I would say that any guitar can be used for anything. Even though this is associated with Andre Segovia and Christopher Parkening and all this amazing classical music, Willie Nelson plays a nylon string guitar and just jams on it. It sounds incredible. So guitars have their associations with certain sounds, but they can be pretty versatile. Over here is an electric. Probably the reason many people come to the guitar is the electric. Starting with the parts. Again, we have our headstock, our tuners, our nut, our fretboard and neck. Same markers as this guitar. Here's some of the differences on an electric guitar. First of all, on an electric guitar, the body is solid. This is a solid piece of wood. It doesn't amplify the strings the way this hollow body does. This is solid. These are called pickups. Think of them as the guitar's microphones. That's basically what they are. They pick up the sound of the strings. This pickup, very often we'll call it the lead pickup, or the bridge pickup because it's down here near the bridge, tends to be a very bright sound. It cuts through. Very often when we play a lead or a solo and we want to cut through the band, we jump to this pickup. This is the rhythm pickup or the neck pickup. It's a much prettier, mellower sound usually. So how do you select between the two? This switch right here. Usually when it's in this position, that's this pickup. When it's in the middle, we have both pickups. And when it's that way, we have the lead or the bridge pickup. Another pick guard, our saddle, and our bridge. Here are our volume and tone controls. So if we have an electric guitar, we have to control it. We have to control the signal that's coming from these pickups. These are usually volume controls. This volume is almost always for this pickup. This volume is almost always for this pickup. And tone control, in other words, treble and bass. This one for this pickup, no, this one for this pickup. I'm looking at it a little backwards. And this one for that. And we do plug these guitars in, not into a wall socket. It's not that kind of electric guitar. We plug them into an amplifier right there. The guitar cord goes right in there and that goes over to the amp. So again, as far as how you use these instruments, the electric guitar, of course it's associated with rock, it's associated with electric blues, it's associated with jazz. It came about originally simply because the guitar had to be louder in order to compete with the other instruments in a band, but then it sort of developed its own voice. I do like to reinforce, though, that every guitar is so versatile. You could play classical music on that. It's going to sound very cool. It's going to sound different than if you played it here. The steel string, these are ideal for strumming. You know, think starting point like folk songs, strumming and accompanying yourself. They're also awesome for finger picking. You'll see a lot of examples of that. They're a very bright sound. They cut through if you need to cut through, if there's other instruments. This can be heard. It sort of comes right through the band. And this tends to be a really mellow sound, almost exclusively used in classical guitar music. Very pretty. But then, again, listen to someone like Willie play it, and he gets a whole different sound out of it. How do you hold these? I'm going to start with this guy over here. With the nylon string classical guitar, especially for people who are trained in classical guitar, they tend to use this thing that I have on the floor. It's called a footrest or a footstool. It raises my knee up, and the reason for that is I'm going to put the guitar like this. It's up high on this knee. The guitar is at an angle. That helps place my hand, and this is like designed for finger picking specifically, in a really nice position. One of the reasons for this particular sitting position that's so advantageous, in classical guitar we tend to play alone. and you're playing bass lines and melodies at the same exact time. And very often you need really wide stretches and between the bass and the melody figure. And there's something about sitting in this position that really helps you to open up your hand and spread wide like that. So this is what we call the classical sitting position. In typical pop, folk music, you'll very often see a guitarist sitting like this. There's not necessarily anything wrong with it. I usually sit in this position if I know I need a lot of good stretching, or if I'm playing classical guitar, I tend to sit in the other position. So this would be our standard sitting position for folk and folk and pop music. The guitar's resting on your knee, your arms up here. Try to sit up straight. Both of these guitars can be held this way very easily. Now the electric, I'm going to grab that guy. You'll notice I have a strap on that. Now, you can play an electric sitting. You can play an electric sitting in either of those two positions. Very often, if someone sits, you will see them do this, and there's kind of a good reason for it. And my strap is a little loose. If it was tighter, I might actually have the guitar hanging from the strap. One good reason for that is if I really need to get used to sometimes sitting and sometimes standing, if I tighten this strap a little so that the guitar just hangs there while I sit, I'm going to stand up. That would be the exact same position for when I stand. And so it makes that transition from standing to sitting a little easier. My strap's a little long right now. I would normally be a little bit shorter, and for that reason, so that when I sat, the guitar still hangs. But that's pretty much it. For a standing position, and in most pop bands and rock bands, you're going to be standing. The guitar hangs from a strap. You still have a nice angle on the neck. Don't let it go definitely don't let the neck go too low unless you just really want to look cool. But it won't help your technique at all. It does look pretty cool though. How's that? Okay. But bring it up. Stand there. My personal preference would be a little bit shorter. But again, it's what you're used to. And ideally, you kind of want it adjusted so that when you do sit, you get the exact same position. So you don't have to readjust your hands.